You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley alongside Jake Mastroianni in game one of what is a crucial, a pivotal, a must-win kind of road trip for the Atlanta Braves, and they were unable to do that winning. In fact, they had a lead. They were unable to hold on to it, and just like that, the Cincinnati Reds, a club that has not lost to the Braves this year, maintained a perfect head-to-head record, and the Atlanta Braves and their playoff hopes were dealt, at least for now, yet another blow with what they are hoping to do over this final 12 games. Losing games like this could be no part of that plan. We got a lot to talk about on this edition of the show. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube, and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Head on over to FanDuel.com and you can get started right there. Jake, the Braves got started exactly the way they wanted to in this game. They built up an early lead. They were able to maintain and even add on to that lead. But unfortunately, when it came time to go blow for blow, it was the Cincinnati Reds that came out on top in what can only be described as yet another letdown for the Atlanta Braves against a sub-500 club.
It's kind of the story of this year. I mean, when we look back at the season, we'll obviously talk about the injuries, but it's going to be these types of games against teams below 500 that they just left on the table that could really haunt this team if they're not able to get into the postseason. So just add another one to a long list of games like this that the Braves have had where they've lost really close games to teams that you feel like they frankly should be beating.
Yeah, but because they frankly should be beating those clubs. They have done a pretty good job against the winning teams. It's been some of these clubs that are struggling. And it's not to say that all sub-500 clubs are created equal, but when you look at what the Braves have been able to do and who they've been and kind of what has been the way that this club has been constructed, this just hasn't really ever been a struggle for them. But it has been an absolute war of attrition of sorts for the Braves this year, and it's been costly. It's been very costly for them, including losing games like this where you jump out to a lead, you add on to that lead, but then all of a sudden a couple of misplays loomed very large in this one. Obviously, the bullpen had yet another tough day, and that makes 3 in a row for this group for various reasons and to various degrees. But Jake, whatever the score is, whether it's 9-0 or 6-5, it's going to hurt just as much this time of year.
It does, obviously, this time of year. And these are just games that you can't lose. And look, if you had said coming into the series, you look at the pitching matchups, this was the one that maybe kind of worried you the most. You weren't sure what you're going to get out of Grant Holmes. I thought, he gave you just what I was kind of hoping for. Yeah. And you really needed your offense to step up. And I felt like they did that. And I know a lot of that came in the first half. You'd have loved to see them continue to add on later on. But, 5 runs on 12 hits with this offense, I don't really think you can ask for much more out of them on a night-to-night basis. So, it is unfortunate to see another lead get to the bullpen. Again, while it was a shallow lead, and you obviously had to go to your bullpen early because the Holmes wasn't stretched out. But to see, lose a game in the second half of the game, just really kind of hurts again. It's something that we've been seeing a lot here, especially these last 3 games.
Yeah, and of course we have to continue talking about runners and scoring position problems for this club. Runners left on base for this team. In a 1-run game, when you leave 14 guys on base, that may be the stat of the game. And then you can look at the error column, and we'll go all through the box score later. Don't worry. We'll do the full autopsy. But you look at 2 errors up there, and they were in the same inning, and they proved very costly in allowing the Reds to just draw that much closer. And then, again, it goes back to me, or it goes before me, it goes back to the margin of error for Braves pitchers. And I know this was not a great night, for them overall. Wasn't their most dominant night, but by and large, the pitching staff has done more than its fair share night in and night out. But when you make a couple of bad plays in a close game, Jake, that can be very costly as well, particularly if your offense goes missing for the final, 5 innings of the game.
It's what I talked about on the podcast on Tuesday. It's the small things for this Atlanta Braves team. This is not the team that can go out there and afford to make these mistakes and just not worry about it because your offense is going to score 5-6 runs a game. It's not that type of team. This team has to be able to do the little things well, and they haven't done that consistently enough this year. And it, again, proved very costly. I think if obviously there's plenty of blame to go around in this one, but that 6th inning, that shallow pop-up, weak pop-up, whatever you want to call it, where either Urshela or Arcia, I think either one of them could have caught it, and neither one of them caught it, and it leads to 2 runs in that inning. And it's just, you cannot have those things happen. especially this time of year when you need every game, you have to make those plays. And the Braves just aren't doing those little things well and capitalizing on opportunities to, add on runs where you can, getting those hits with runners in scoring position, making plays defensively to help your pitching staff out. It's just, it all adds up. And the Braves have played in so many of these close games this year. It's really, again, shown up where you see them not able to execute in those situations and just do some of the fundamental aspects of the game to win. And again, it's just because of the talent level has evened out. You've lost a lot of talent on this team. When the talent level is evened out like that, it comes down to, okay, who can execute those small parts of the ball game? And the Braves have just failed to do that and shown that they haven't been able to do that as well as other teams. And that's why they've lost so many of these close games.
Yeah, and I know that ball that was hit to Urshela and Arcia over there, a ball that should be caught 100 times out of 100. There's just really no two ways about that. It was called a single, of course, because that's how weird the scoring of baseball is. And, you're going to get some hometown, cooking, if you will, there. But putting the semantics aside of it, it's a play that needs to be made. If it is made, 2 runs do not score. But ultimately, when the double that brought home those runs, or the single that turned into a double, thanks to a misplay, a rare one by Michael Harris II, the Reds were able to just draw that much closer. And at this point, it's always true, but runs that are kept off the board for this Braves club in particular are as good at this point, Jake, I think, as putting runs on the board in a lot of ways or on a lot of nights, because again, that margin for error for this pitching staff remains walking a razor's edge.
And we talked about it a lot. This has become the formula for the Braves to win games. It has to be great pitching and it has to be at least really good defense. And I feel like the defensive side of that has let them down a little bit here lately. And it's just, you got to have both of those, but that is the recipe for this Braves team. And it's what has kept them in this for so long, is they've gotten that great pitching for the most part. The bullpen has struggled here the last 3 games, but you got to have that good pitching and that good defense. And again, I just don't feel like the defense has been holding up their part of the bargain here. It has really let the Braves pitching staff down in every run, as you said, in all these close games when your offense is struggling to score. You just cannot allow free runs. You go back to the game the other night and Max Fried with the, letting the runner steal third and then the wild pitch in the dirt gives up a free run. You cannot afford to do that when you have an offense that is struggling to score consistently.
No, and then you had an opportunity where Fernando Cruz had to come into this game because of an injury to the starter for the Reds. Brandon Williamson left in the second inning with an apparent arm issue, and then Cruz came in and got himself into a lot of trouble, a lot of free passes. That was the death knell for the Braves against the Dodgers about 24 hours ago. A lot of free passes and then a couple of big hits. And just like that, a crooked number goes on the board. Unfortunately for the Braves, they weren't really able to make him pay. Jorge Soler eventually hit a home run off of him, but there was nobody on base for that one. And so that blow was not as big as perhaps it could have or should have been as far as that opportunity. They just didn't cash in those free chances. So when you look at the 14 men left on base, a lot of those guys, in fact, 6 of them, were free. The free passes that the Braves got, in addition to out hitting the Reds, of course, in this one, 12-10, because that's the thing. On a night after you lose, giving up 9 runs on 4 hits, you out hit your opponent and lose by 1 run. It's just, I don't even know what you say at this point about the way that this goes from day to day. It's just a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's just the 2024 Braves. I think that's all you can say. It's been that type of thing all year long. You finally do one thing well and you can't do the other thing well. It's just, again, all of those things seem to go your way, and you make some of that, you make your own luck, as they say, and the Braves haven't done a great job of that, but it just does feel like it. The night to night, it feels like this team is finding new ways to lose that you don't see from this Braves team and haven't seen for this Braves team over the last 7 years. And it's frustrating, certainly as the fans, and the players are frustrated. You see Orlando Arcia spiking a bat down in the ground in this one too. It's the Braves are feeling it, and the pressure's on. We talked about that too. There's 11 games left in the schedule now. You have to be able to turn things on. It's now or never.
Yeah, no, it is. And this road trip, again, it's the soft part of the schedule over the final 12 games. You got 3 in Cincinnati. You lose the first one, so now you got 11 left. 2 more there, 3 against the Miami Marlins, and then you've got 6 games against clubs that very much see themselves in October. One, of course, being the New York Mets, but then the Kansas City Royals right after that. We'll talk a lot about the wild card later on, but I said this on social, and I'm sure you would agree, and I'm sure most Braves fans out there doing some very simple math would say, you go out on the 6-game road trip, you got to win 4 times, really need to win 5 times. Anything less than that is going to be a disappointment, and it's going to set you back, if not deal you a blow, because I don't know if you've looked lately, but the New York Mets, they're showing no signs of slowing down. They pounded the Nationals and have picked up another game in that wild card race. And like you said, I mean, time is running out. Every single one of these games is must win. Every single one of them is an opportunity to either keep pace, pick up some ground, or at least give yourself the opportunity to be in position to make it up when you go head to head against New York next week.
Yeah, coming into this week, it felt like you had to have 5 wins. Again, you really needed to, as you said, going 4-2 on the 6-game trip maybe doesn't kill you, but
Right.
obviously you want to try to get 5 wins this week to set you up in a good spot. Now you're going to have to win 5 in a row for that to happen after losing the first 2 games of this week. And as you said, the Mets, even without Lindor, they are finding ways to win teams against a team like the Nationals. That another example of a team that the Braves have really struggled against this year. So again, the Mets are finding ways to win without their best player, and the Braves just aren't finding ways to win when they need to.
Yeah, they outlasted the Nationals in game 1 of that series yesterday. They just absolutely pounded them into submission, and they used an Acuna to do it. Congrats to Ronald's little brother, Luis Angel Acuna, with his first major league home run. But I don't know that too many people are tuning into this postcast to hear updates about that Acuna, because the one that the Braves are counting on has been long gone for quite some time. But I don't know if that's bitter irony or pure coincidence, or maybe just the way that things go. But the New York Mets, with an Acuna in the lineup, putting up some serious numbers and picking up a game on the Braves in the wild card race. We're going to take a break. When we come back, though, we'll talk a little bit about the pitching side of things, obviously the offensive frustrations for the Braves, and perhaps could there be help on the way in the form of Ozzie Albies? We'll talk about the first game of his rehab assignment that comes your way next on the Braves Postcast. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks. With as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, from California to Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, all one word, for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on the Prize Picks app for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy with Prize Picks. Well, Jake, let's look at the line score and the box score of what was another unfortunate loss for the Braves at a time in which they can ill afford such an outcome. For Atlanta, 5 runs, 12 hits, 2 costly errors in this game, or at least one that was very costly. One, I guess, ended up not being called an error, if I looked at the box score correctly or the play-by-play correctly. Either way, misplays hurt the Braves in this one. 5 runs, 12 hits, 2 errors. Reds with 6 runs on 10 hits, no errors. Braves left 14 men on base in this game. Reds left 7. Atlanta now 81-70 on the season. 74-78 is the record of the Cincinnati Reds. The win in relief goes to Suter. He picks it up, is 1-0. Diaz gets the save, his 28th of the year. The loser, Pierce Johnson, in relief, serving up the 2-run homer to Spencer Steer in the 7th inning that completed the Reds' comeback. A lot of frustration to go around, unfortunately, for the Braves on this night, as the bullpen gave up 4 runs in this one. We talked about a little bit of the shoddy defense that was in play there. Grant Holmes got the start here. 2 earned runs on 5 hits, couple of walks, couple of strikeouts for him across 4 innings. I know the expectation was that he'd throw somewhere maybe around 60, 65 pitches. He threw close to 80, and I'm sure he was, trying to give the Braves everything that he possibly could. I know we talked about this yesterday, and I can't really look at the pitching, and especially what he did in this game, and say, did this cost the Braves? But I was a little bit surprised, I know you might have been as well, that there was no move made to bring up another starter who might be just a little bit more stretched out, considering the pounding that the bullpen had taken the last couple of days.
Yeah, I was surprised by it. I certainly thought it was a chance that we could see Ian Anderson back up, but obviously I'm not watching those Gwinnett games, and they are, so they know, what he's capable of, and they felt like he was the better option. And look, Grant Holmes pitched 4 innings in this game, gave up 2 runs. If you would have said going in, that was what you were going to get out of him, I would have said, okay, I'll take that, because you knew the offense was going to have to score some runs for you in this game if you were going to have a chance to win, and they did that. So I'm fine with the outing. Again, the decision to start him, I thought was a little bit questionable. I thought you had some guys down there in Gwinnett that maybe could give you some more length and have obviously the upside to give you better outings than that. But 4 innings, 2 earns with Grant Holmes, I mean, I will certainly take that from him.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't one of the reasons I would point to and say, well, the Braves lost because of X, Y, Z. I mean, they need to figure out a way to do something other than leave 14 runners on base. I mean, that's the one that you can circle. Then I think you look at the misplays, the errors, or the non-plays, and the error that was made. that proved costly for the Braves in this one, as the Reds scored a couple of times in the 6th inning of this game. Now, everything started out pretty great because you had the Braves with a 3-run first inning, leadoff home run for Michael Harris the second, 2-run shot for Matt Olson, as well as the Braves hang 3 on the board a day after being shut out by the Dodgers. Take a quick lead. Reds to answer with a run. Braves put one right back on the board in the second. Jorge Soler hits a homer in the 4th inning. That makes it a 5-1 game. The second run scores against Holmes in the 4th, a silent 5th, and then 2 runs in the 6th, 2 runs in the 7th for the Reds, who scored the final 5 runs of this game. And the Braves just quite simply weren't able to get some things done. That included, and I think this needs to be pointed out because watching the game in real time, and I guess just having the expectation of a certain amount of foot speed, when Gio Urshela was on second base with 2 outs, a single to shallow left field, he just wasn't able to even be in a position to score. And I realize if you're just that slow and you're going to get thrown out, that's not going to make it much more fun. But I think it just points out another thing that the Braves are kind of missing, another dimension that they're missing, at least in my book, is a lot of people want them to do small ball things, and I think that they can do some of those, but they don't have a lot of speed to spark a lot of these rallies. Some clubs that aren't overly reliant on having to hit their way, slug their way to victories, can do a lot more, but I feel like the Braves, they don't really have the speed to do too much at the moment.
They don't, and we've talked about that with obviously the loss of Acuna, Ozzie being out for so long, Michael Harris being out for so long parts of the season. I mean, those are the 3 guys that bring some speed. Now you've added some in a Whit Merrifield, Luke Williams playing here or there, guys that do have some speed. But I'm with you when Michael Harris hit that ball and it floats in there. I mean, that ball's up in the air a while, it drops down. I'm thinking that's a run. But I look up and Urshela's not even at third base by the time that ball hits the ground. And it's not because he didn't take off when the ball was hit. There's 2 outs. You're obviously taking off. It just, like you said, doesn't have that speed. So you finally get a hit there with runner in scoring position, floats up in the air for a while, but just because of that lack of speed, he's unable to score there. And I think he would have been dead if he sent him home. So I think it was the right decision, but it's just unfortunate because you get a little flare hit there, and for the runner in scoring position, you're thinking you're going to get a run out of it, but it wouldn't even have been close.
Yeah, it's just when you watch it in real time, I don't know about you, but my expectation was, okay, that's hanging up for a while. It's 2 outs.
Me too.
So why not? I mean, maybe have a bigger secondary lead. I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things. It would have been one more run. Maybe they'd still be playing right now. Maybe it would be delaying the inevitable. I don't know. I've watched the Braves in 2024. You have as well. I don't know if scoring one more time is necessarily a great thing, but then again, they're pretty great in extras. So maybe that's what they need to do, is push every game into extra innings and get a free runner on second base. But of course, we've seen them get free runners on third base, and it hasn't worked out so well. So your guess is as good as mine, trying to make sense of the situations that we watch on a nightly basis. But that's just more going back to, all jokes aside, the little things that just aren't happening for this club at this time. Reds went ahead for good on Spencer Steer's 2-run homer in the 7th inning off Pierce Johnson. Pierce is obviously an important arm in this bullpen. He's been very good by and large, but here lately, Jake, he has run into some trouble with the long ball, and this was another example of that today, as Spencer Steer was able to jump on a curveball and give the Reds the lead for good.
Yeah, and that curveball in both at bat, in the single to start the inning and then the home run as well. I mean, that's his pitch. He's going to throw it, and it's coming. It's just typically it's so good it doesn't really matter. But I think he left a couple of them up in this spot, and just, again, Cincinnati Reds hitters making some good swings on it. But he's been a big part of this bullpen. I do feel like he's been faded somewhat a little bit here. You've seen him go to Dylan Lee, obviously kind of dependent on the matchups in the 6th and 7th inning. But it's unfortunate because, again, he's been so reliant all season long. You get a lead to that 7th inning, you feel pretty good about either Lee, Johnson, and then getting it over to Jimenez and Iglesias. That's kind of been the recipe on the back end. But just a tough night for Pierce Johnson, who had a tough run of things at the end of August, and then had some clean outings in September before this one. But he's a guy you're gonna have to come out there and put up some zeros. He's a big part, obviously, of that bullpen. Need him to produce.
Yeah, no, you 100% are, because, I mean, whether it's him, whether it's Joe Jimenez, obviously Raisel Iglesias was on an incredible run. I know he hit a speed bump last time out, but, I mean, these are the arms you're expecting to get a lot out of. I would also make a case that with Dylan Lee at this point, with no A.J. Minter, I mean, all due respect to Aaron Bummer, who may have a longer, resume in terms of more years in the big leagues than Dylan Lee has, I think that's your best left-handed option at this point as well. So maybe he can't be deployed in the middle innings where you saw Jesse Chavez come in. I know Dylan Lee was warming up at one point, and I think that if he'd had to come in and deal with Ellie De La Cruz, that would have been where he would have come in and started perhaps a 2-inning outing, perhaps, because at this point, can you really throw Dylan Lee multiple innings, or do you want to save him for multiple outings in a series? There's a lot of different pieces that are in play here, and I don't know if these bullpen decisions are necessarily the thing that always bites the Braves. They can on occasion, obviously, but again, I hate to beat a dead horse because there's really no call for it, but 14 men left on base, those kind of numbers are going to be hard to overlook no matter how you slice up the rest of the game.
Well, and going back on the bullpen, we've had this happen a lot here recently. It seems like where, a reliever struggling to get out of an inning, so you're having to call on one of your better guys to try to get out of that inning and then bring him back out for the next inning. And, most relievers are used to coming in one inning, pitching that one inning, and that's it. And so you wonder what effect that has. Pierce Johnson also was looking ahead and pitched since in 4 days. So it'd been a little bit for him, but you're having to call on him to get out of an inning and then bring him back out for the next one. And again, don't know if that plays into it, but that's just, not typically what you're seeing in your 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. You're usually bringing in that guy to get through that inning, but it's just because the Rays have had, it seems like they had to do that so often. Joe Jimenez has had to do it some, come in and get out of a jam and then pitch the 8th inning too. And so you just wonder what kind of effect that could be having on the bullpen. But, it's just one of those things right now with the Braves.
Yeah, one of the many things that are not happening the way that they needed to on a given night. And when you think you got one thing figured out, it seems like something else just doesn't work for him. And that has been the story in 2024. It was the story on this night, a 6-5 loss to the Cincinnati Reds. We'll come back. We'll put a bow on that one and take a look at the wild card race, what's going on there, and some news from the minor leagues where Ozzie Albies was in action as his rehab assignment got started with AAA Gwinnett. Could be a quick one. We'll talk about what he was doing down on the farm when we come back on the Braves Postcast. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and we have something different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can download America's #1 sportsbook today. Well, let's look at the wild card, Jake, because the Braves lost some ground as the New York Mets beat up on the Washington Nationals by a 10-1 score. Little brother of Ronald Acuna Jr., a big part of that win with Francisco Lindor sidelined. They have called on one of their top prospects to come up and help them out, and they're now 2 games up on the Braves for that 3rd and final wild card spot. D-backs at Colorado, where they stepped on a banana peel yesterday, so there was that. Padres playing the Houston Astros. That's a late game. So we won't be able to really factor what's going on there. But when it comes to that head-to-head battle for that 3rd spot with the New York Mets, the way it's been for the last, 2 months or so now, if not longer, this is where the Braves are going to have to find a way to not lose any more ground before they get to that series against the Mets, which is coming up next week.
Yeah, you really want to hope you don't get to that series and have to sweep the Mets. I know the Braves did it a couple of years ago for the division, but obviously just not an ideal situation, not the same team for the Braves this year that we saw 2 years ago. So at the very least, you want to be 1 game back, because then if you win that series, you get the season tiebreaker over the Mets, as I believe they're tied right now 5-5 against each other. So you get within a game and you win that series, you own the tiebreaker. So if you're tied at the end of the year, obviously the Braves would win that head-to-head tiebreaker, but you got to get there. And right now you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, they have been. And the Braves have kind of been trying to, I guess, keep it as close as they can, keep it manageable. And the New York Mets they haven't slowed down at all. I mean, since the start of June, they've been one of the best teams in baseball record-wise. They have found something up there. It's been clicking for them. It's been working for them. And, this is, what it's all about this time of year, is finding a way to at least give yourself a chance to maybe get into that series and have a little something special go on. But for the New York Mets, they got to be feeling as confident and strong as any team in Major League Baseball right now. And they did it again, beating up on a club in the Washington Nationals that they should be beating up on, and one that the Braves went 5-8 against this year.
Yeah, it's again what we kind of started off with on this episode. When you look back at the season, if the Braves don't make the postseason, you're going to look at the 1-0 loss to the White Sox. You're going to look at that 8-2 blown lead to the Rockies. You're going to look at those losses that you had to the Nationals. Yes, a lot of injuries, a lot of things the Braves have had to overcome, but also just not being able to take care of business. Like I always talk about when you're playing those types of teams, the Mets have done that. And as you said, the Mets have been one of the better teams in baseball for several months now, and the Braves just have not. And again, if they do miss out and they're not able to catch the Mets, I think that's one thing Braves fans and Braves themselves are going to look back and kick themselves out that they just weren't able to take care of business in these types of games.
Yeah, no, it's been a frustration for sure against teams that really the Braves should not have had so much trouble against. I mean, whether it's losing a series to the White Sox, who we know are historically one of the worst teams in the history of baseball, one of those, that 1-0 loss with Chris Sale on the mound, might be the front runner for most frustrating loss of the season. If not, then it's certainly up there. There are quite a few more. In fact, so many that we don't have enough time to talk about them. But be that as it may, the 6-5 loss to the Cincinnati Reds was certainly ill-timed and frustrating in its own right. 6-game trip. I talked about this earlier, but might as well hit on it again. Cincinnati, 5 games under 500 coming into this series. Miami sitting in last place in the National League East. This needs to be no less than 4-2. Really needs to be 5-1 against these two sub-500 teams. But as we've talked about so many times, the Braves, for whatever reason, turn into about a 500 club when they're playing clubs that just aren't that good.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a 500 club, I guess, since the end of April, pretty much. But again, even against teams that you feel like they should be taking advantage of, they're just not. And you put yourself in a situation now where you really have to win your next 5 games. And I don't know how many times the Braves have done that this year, if they've done that this year. So it's an uphill battle for them to even get to that spot. But it's kind of what they have to do just to put themselves in a situation going into that Met series where you don't have to try to sweep them. And that's what the Braves are trying to avoid. Now, you do have the guys on the mound coming up in the series to feel good to get back on track. And as you said, all teams below 500 aren't made the same. The Reds are a good team, a good lineup, a good young team that a lot of people thought would be in the postseason this year. But certainly, it's an opportunity for the Braves to pick up a couple of wins. And you got a couple of guys on the mound coming up in these next 2 games to give you a chance to do that.
Yeah, Braves' longest winning streak was 6 games. It was from April 14th to April the 20th, and obviously they balanced that out by losing 6 games, not once but twice, coming out of the All-Star break. So there's that. But the Braves have got to figure out a way to beat whoever it is in front of them, regardless of if their record is 5 games under 500, 5 games over, 15 games over, 15 games under. They just got to beat whoever they can, whoever's in front of them that day. Ozzie Albies began his rehab assignment in Gwinnett. Of course, he's been sidelined since just after the All-Star break after fracturing his left wrist. He is going to be playing at least a couple of games with the Stripers, played second base on Tuesday night, went 2 for 3, hit a homer, knocked in 3 runs, and walked as well. Left-handed starter on the mound for Jacksonville against the Stripers in this game. He should be facing a righty tomorrow. That's notable, of course, because Ozzie is going to swing exclusively from the right side, at least for the time being, because that left wrist, not feeling great on the left-handed swing. But, say what you want, and I know Whit Merrifield's gutting it out and playing second base on a fractured foot, but I think getting Ozzie Albies back, getting anybody back that could help you out at this point, Jake, it's got to be critical. And Ozzie's been at the center of just about every good thing that the Braves have done for the better part of 6 years. It's got to at least be some kind of boost to get him back and have someone else available with his kind of experience and his kind of talent.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a desperation move at this point in the season, but I mean, what else are you going to do? And like you said, I want Ozzie Albies in there, and especially if he's hitting home runs at AAA from the right side, even against a lefty. I mean, that's first game back in 2 months, and you're able to do that. I don't care at what level. That's pretty impressive. So, again, my expectations aren't extremely high, but just having a guy of that caliber back in your lineup and just the leader that he is, what he brings to that clubhouse has to at least give you some sort of boost for a team that really just needs some sort of spark here down the stretch to get them going.
Yeah, and we know how much Ozzie means to this team. And I know that might sound like eyewash at this point, because what in the world can he possibly do for him? He is not having a great year either. There's a lot of guys that are probably in that boat where they're not having the year that they want to, but getting some kind of help at this point, I feel like has to be at least notable, if for nothing else, than to get the emotional boost that they could certainly use at this point if you believe in that kind of thing. Braves need a good start after a busy bullpen day on Tuesday as Spencer Schwellenbach takes the mound in the Wednesday Game 2 against Cincinnati. It's a 6:40 p.m. Eastern time first pitch. Can Spencer Schwellenbach deliver yet again? 6 innings of 2-run ball against the Dodgers last time out. He's 6-7 on the season, 3.73 ERA. And closing in, Jake, I saw this on the broadcast, but as he goes into this start, very good chance he's going to be crossing 150 innings on the season, and said that, yeah, we've talked about it, and I'm comfortable continuing to pitch. Club's comfortable with it. And obviously, here's a statement that everybody probably knows. The Braves need Spencer Schwellenbach if they want to do anything of note to close out 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. I feel like you're asking too much of a kid that had 65 professional innings coming into the year, but the Braves have to have him. They need him in there right now to give them any type of chance because he's just continued to be that good. Impressive outing last time against the Dodgers, but like you said, a guy that's approaching 150 innings on the year, a guy that only threw, I think, 32 and 2/3 innings in college, and then threw 65 professional innings last year, and he surpassed those numbers combined in his first year in the big leagues, first full year in the big leagues. So I mean, that's just it's incredible, but the Braves got to have it, and they need a big start here after losing their last 3 games.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I mean, I'm not a big believer that there's been any empirical evidence that shows that shutting these guys down is really going to alter the path of their career. On the other hand, I guess every time a pitcher goes out there, you're kind of tempting fate. So I think you just kind of roll with it. And if you're feeling good and you continue to perform, then that's going to be the indicator of what you're going to be trying to do every fifth day. In the case of Spencer Schwellenbach, he'll be facing off against Jacob Junis, who's 4-0 with a 2.73 ERA for the Reds. Again, game 2 of the 3-game set comes your way 6:40 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday up in Cincinnati. That is going to wrap up this edition of the Braves Postcast. Thank you as always for riding along with us. We appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube and Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Again, the Braves dropped the opener of the 3-game set to the Reds, the first of a 6-game road trip, their final one of the year. Need to get back in the win column and stay there throughout the rest of this trip in Cincinnati and Miami. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time. And until then, so long, everyone.